Hi, I'm Jay Teske. I'm the owner of Jay Teske Leather Co. And we're going to spend some time showing you some of the products that we work on here in Kingston and the different processes that we use to make them. This is Stas.
Hi, I'm Hadass. I'm Jay's wife. I'm going to be behind the camera.
So first we're going to start off by talking about handrails. We've been doing a lot of them lately. So there's different styles that we offer. There's spiral wrap, braided. There's a tuck seam that we do, and I'm just going to go over those and show you some samples first. So here's an example of a braided handrail. Get a little closer here. You can see that. So since most of the work is made to order, we work with architects and designers, and they'll spec a certain diameter rail. So every time there's a new diameter, we have to take into consideration how wide each piece of leather needs to be in order to wrap around it. So I always do like a small test. That's what one of these is. It's just a test to make sure that everything's fitting snugly. And one of the other things when we're doing braided especially is that we don't want to use just a thick piece of cut leather, because when you stack leather on top of each other, you start getting ridges. So I'm going to move the camera closer and just show you what we need to do in order to get rid of that. So there's a cut, it's called skive, a skive. There's different ways to do it. When I'm using long strips of leather like this, I'll use a machine because it'll do it uniformly across the whole strip of leather. So here's the leather, and then you can see on the edges, some has been taken off so that you have a really minimal piece of leather on the edges, so that when you lay it on top of each other, they'll lay flat, and it's much nicer on your hand. As you're going down the handrail, you don't want to feel like bum, 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 you know, get stuck on your hand and all that. So we use that for the braided as well as the spiral wrap. Now the spiral wrap, you can see here on the back, it's unfinished leather on this side and finished on this side. And there's a skive on both ends. One is folded over so that when you do the wrap, you have a nice finished edge. And then as you wrap it around, as it hits the other skive, it'll lay flat into it. So again, you don't want to start building up leather on top of leather. It doesn't feel nice on the hand. So I'm going to show you an example of how it's done. So this is a little, that's probably about a 1.5 inch diameter. So what we do, we offer two different finishes on the ends. We can either take a really thin piece of leather and wrap over the end, or we also offer caps in stainless steel and brass and bronze as well. And for all of our brass hardware, we have the option of blackening it or adding different patinas. You could even blacken stainless steel, which this is. So I'm just going to show you how we wrap these. So you got to start off with a tapered piece of leather like this, and I'll show you why in a minute, because when you start, it might be kind of tough to see here. Let me just start it, and then I'll give you an example of how we do this and how it lays flat once everything is in there. Now, and I'm not sure it's black, so it's kind of hard to see, but when I lay this over, it's laying on the skived part, which is a lot thinner. So when this, it's the same width as this channel here. So it's going to lay on top of it and give you a much flatter. Now, it kind of looks easy when you're doing it on a, what is it, like 12-inch piece of dowel, because I can turn it with my hand as I'm wrapping it. Now, if the handrail is in place, which often is the case, then, you know, there's a lot of like bending over and looking at it upside down. And normally when I do these handrails, there's a little bit of adhesive that I put on, so everything stays taut as I'm going along. But let me just get to the end of this, and then I'll just show you a side view of it. Now I'm not going to finish it because the finish requires another taper, which I'll show you on a finished handrail in just a second. But that's pretty much it there. So you can see, you get a nice tight wound, and it's not raised as much as it would be if you had not done the skive, and you have a nice finished edge where we folded the leather over there. So now I'm just going to bring over some more samples. Now, the other thing is, when you're doing a spiral wrap, well, pretty much any handrail, The maximum length of a hide is about 7 to 8 feet long. So that's as far as you're going to get with a strip. Now, when you're spiraling it, you're going to get a lot. You're not going to get as far as that. So you're going to have some seams on the back there. That's normally where we try to put them. We just hide them. And we're able to do that because as we're wrapping, when we get to the bottom, if I know I'm not going to be able to get another wrap, I'll cut it and splice it together there. And then let me find, this is the beginning. You don't see this.
So Brad is asking if it's typically glued down.
It's not like glued the entire way. I'll maybe run. I have a spray gun with adhesive in it, and I'll just run a spray across the rail, and that'll just tack the leather down as I'm wrapping. But the wrap in general is holding everything in place. And then at the end, you got to get creative. So what we do is a little tuck there, because you have a little tail, and then we cut a little slit. Can you see that there?
Yeah.
Kind of tough to see. And we just tuck it on in there. And that's how we finish them. And if this went all the way to the end, we'd have a finished cap. But this is a big, long 6-foot door pull here. And we left the ends black and steel. Normally there'd be brackets on there. And then I'll show you another style, which is the tucked seam. So this one, I mean, we got away with the long piece here because, as I was saying, you can get 7 to 8 feet long on it. After that, you would have a seam, but we would skive it and fold it down so that the seam is minimal. You'll see a line, but you want to try to keep the bump down as much as possible. So this one, actually, I'll show you this on this braided one here. I was using a scrap piece here, and you can see there's a kerf, which is just a blade cut that runs the whole length of the handrail. So that allows us to take the ends of the leather, and we'll just stuff it into the slot there, the kerf that we had cut. You see that? And then we'll fill it in with a finished piece of leather. And again, that's all on the bottom. You don't see it unless you stick your head down under there. But it adds a nice little finish to it in case somebody does stick their head down there. This one has some stainless steel end caps on it. And what else we got here? We have a hand. This is a combination of hand stitched and machine stitched. So on this one, we have stitching along the bottom. We ran a sewing machine across the length of it, and then we hand stitched back and forth to close the seam together. So that's another option we have. We could talk about the leather. Also, all the leather that we use in-house is sourced and tanned in the U.S. from it's a tannery in Pennsylvania called Wickett and Craig. They do amazing work there. So they specialize in English bridle leather, harness leather, and we use natural veg tan, skirting leather, carving leather, depend on who you ask. They use different terminology. But all the leather that they have there is veg tanned. That means it's tanned using vegetables rather than chemicals. The process takes about 4 to 5 weeks just to tan, then it goes on a rack to dry. So there's a big process. Your typical like upholstery leather would take 4 to 5 days to tan, but it's using chromium, which is a chemical, which isn't as easy to get rid of as your natural vegetable tan solutions that they use.
So someone's asking, what characteristics do you look for in leather, in high quality leather, and how do you care for it?
The care depends on what type of leather it is. And also I found the finish too, because if you add, I tend to go towards oils. Oils, they definitely will darken a lighter leather though. The good thing about using a high quality tannery is there's less insect bites. Like if you get a lot of South American hides, they're free range and everything, but there's a lot of insects down there, so they'll bite the cows, and that will transfer onto the the finished product. Now, Wickett and Craig, a lot of their steers are coming from the Canadian-U.S. border where it's colder, so there's a lot less insects. They're not using barbed wire, so they're not going to rub up against it and get the big old scars on there. So they're very clean hides. That's what I look for. I want to use as much of the hide as possible. And when you start getting down to the belly of a hide, it gets kind of stretchy. The stiffest part of the hide is up along its back, and when you get a hide, this type of leather, you're gonna get a half a hide, so that the hide just split down the back, right? So it takes about, I don't know if you can see this whole table, but it fills up the whole workshop table. I also want to show you the actual skiving process by hand, because a lot of it's done by machine when we're doing long strips like this, but there's always some parts where we have to do it if we're doing an install on site. There's going to be parts that we have to do by hand. So that I just wanted to show you the sharp tools that are used. This is a skiver. This they call a moon knife or a head knife. These are made by a company that has been around since 1800s. They've been around for a very long time. And then there's a French skiver. And I'm just going to show you basically what they do. Again, I was saying the skiving is taking a very thick piece of leather. This is about 7-8 ounces, and we go by ounces, not inches or anything like that. So what you do is you just run it down, and you can see how it just removes some product. Now this is a very thick piece of leather. I wouldn't use this on a handrail or anything like that. And again, it makes it so that we can bend the leather. If you bend the leather that's this thick, you're never going to get it flat. And if you do hammer it, sometimes it'll start to crack along where the bend is. So by thinning it out, it's more pliable, flexible. It's still very strong too. You could take this is a 3 to 4 ounce piece of leather. You can really pull on this and tug on it, and it's not going to snap or rip or anything like that. So it's very durable.
So Brad's asking if there's any way to see you stitch seams.
Hand stitch or machine stitch? Hand stitching is very time consuming. It's taking 2 needles, and it's pretty much a saddle stitch is what we do. Is you're taking one long thread and you're sticking it through one end and pulling it through the other with 2 different needles. And the reason why it's so strong is because if one thread breaks, the other thread is going to hold its place. A machine is a lock stitch, so it's basically doing like this. But the problem is if one thread breaks, then the whole chain can come undone. That's why, like if you have some clothing and you start losing a thread, the whole thing will unravel. If you're using a saddle stitch, it's not going to happen. You're always going to have one of those threads that's continuing. It's going to hold everything together.
Uh-huh. Do you want to, and then Erin is asking, as a mom of 2 kids, how do you clean leather?
Clean. That again depends on what it is. Upholstery leather, there's tons of products out there. If it's anything natural that's veg tan, you're going to want to use something that's very, very gentle. Most of it can be cleaned with saddle soap, and you can find that at pretty much any pharmacy or Walmart in the shoe care aisle. It's the gentlest soap that you can get for this type of leather.
So Brad wants to see you hand stitch.
Still hand stitch? I don't know if I have anything prepared for that.
I can talk to them about the pulls if you want while you get something ready.
All right, I'm gonna try.
Okay.
Let me.
So I'll steal the camera for a while we put him on the spot and make him hand stitch for us. So I'm gonna bring you into our showroom. So this is our showroom in Kingston. We have here what we have on the website, the Field Supply website, which is our 5 different styles of cabinetry pulls. So this is very similar to what Jay was doing. It's a spiral wrapped pull. This is called our Helix handle. All of these have brass hardware on them, but we also do them with stainless steel, and then we also can blacken the brass. This is our planer handle, which is actually steel on the inside. It's really strong. This one is hand stitched. It's called our radial handle. And so he hand stitches it and then he hand burnishes the edge over here. And then we have these are our 2 simpler. This is just our classic knob. It's actually stacked leather. So it's actually 3 pieces of leather that are stacked together, glued and hand burnished. And over here we have our standard pull. And here we just have it in black. And I did want to show you guys how natural leather patinas. So from Wicked and Craig, we do 3 different types of leather. A natural leather, which has no dyes on it. And so these were all from the same hide. So this one we've put oils on, and it's been in the sun. But the 2 of these are also a little bit bleached from the sun just because they're in our showroom. The natural leather is a little bit pinker than this usually in color, but it will age with time and it will turn into this. over time too. And where your hand is, like if we're always pulling the cabinet from this spot, you'll actually kind of see darker areas of where my hands are. So that's something that I love about natural leather. Some designers don't like it because it will wear however the client is using it. So they don't like the idea of not having a solid color. So it's really to each their own, but that's definitely something that we love. And up there, if you guys can see, we have just 2 of our handrails. So the bottom one there is hand stitched and machine stitched, and the top one is a channel wrap. And then I'm going to show you over here. We have our shelves, which are also on the site. So our shelves, Jay, these were years in the making. He tried putting wood in between and putting metal in between, and actually we ended up with tempered glass. So this is tempered glass, and then in between 2 really thick pieces of leather. And then he machine stitches it with one of our machines, which I will show you, a really heavy duty machine from Germany, around there. And these come with brass hardware, and it just goes right into the wall. Jay was, master of all things. So he designed how they can just, and I could actually just take these off for you guys, how they just go right into the wall, and it's very clean and really modern looking. So those are our shelves. Those are also up on the site. And then our last item that we have up on the site before we check in with Jay again is our swing. Everyone loves this swing. We have had one outside for years and years just to test. We have never brought it inside. Actually, that's not true. I bring it in twice a year to condition it. So that's not true. I'm lying a little bit. But the nice thing is that it comes off. So if we weren't just prototyping it to know, to make sure that we're selling the best product that we can, I would, if I was the owner of it, bring it inside for the winters, just because it is leather and it's going to last longer. If in the winters, when it's really cold, the kids aren't going to go out there, or the adults, I swing on it too. I would bring it inside, but it's certainly something that you can leave outside all year round if you want to. So, and what happens when you do leave it outside is the brass starts to age a little bit. And so we actually have like a few drip marks on our one outside, just because the brass has aged and kind of dripped down. It looks really beautiful. And certainly you can keep it indoors and then you don't have to worry about it at all, or under a porch. So I do see some questions. I'm going to go back to Jay and see if he's ready to show you guys. I'll also show you the other part of our showroom, which is where we have our smaller goods. I see someone asked on there about motorcycle seats, which that's how Jay started. This actually is what started the whole business. It's a 1962 Vespa VBB that Jay bought on Craigslist back when people used to use Craigslist more, and restored it. He made the seats for it, and he was working at a tattoo shop, and a motorcycle shop owner saw that he made the seats, and that was it. You got into custom motorcycle upholstery.
That was it.
Yeah.
But I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved on. Right, so apparently we're going to hand stitch some stuff. So I'm going to show you how to thread the needle, too, because it's not just like threading a needle when you're sewing clothes. So what you do, well, this part is anyway, you thread the needle like you would, and then you take the needle and you go through the thread like that, all right? And then you pull it through tight. So now the needle is locked in to the thread. It doesn't come out. I know when I yes, I sew clothes too for myself. When you can't do it when the thread is that small, but when I don't, I hate when the needle always comes out. But anyway, that's another story. So what we did here is we put the needles on both ends of the thread, right? So this is going to be a saddle stitch. Now, because the leather is so thick, you can't take a needle and just stick it through this. It'll go through your finger the end of the needle will go through your finger before it goes to the leather. So we pre-punch everything. And there's different tools to do that. Here's one, right? Now these, I don't know if you can see the ends. These are on a slant. Now, when you look at leather products, usually the thread isn't going straight across. The thread is laying on an angle, and that's because the needles, even on the sewing machine, are cutting the leather in that particular way. It's not a round hole that it's punching. It's either a diamond or it's a slant like this. So I have it cut on both sides, and it's evenly spaced because I'm using this little guy here. So what I'm going to do is, now I just threw these together so they're going to line up perfectly. This is called a stitch pony, right? There's different kinds. There's bigger ones that you can sit on, and there's a foot clamp. This is just your basic model. And all this does, you stick the leather in there, and you clamp it down. Now, you're supposed to be sitting in a seat when you do this, right? So you're going to put your legs through here. One leg here, one leg here. This goes up in between them. And that's going to hold everything in place because you need two hands to sew. So Hadassah is going to be my legs.
Okay.
Let's see if we can get this here. Now, I don't want the side of it, though. This is a saddle stitch. This is the most durable stitch you're ever going to find. So we start off, I'm just going to start off in the middle because, again, and I got to line everything up so that to make sure I'm going through the stitch hole on the other side. Right. Now, it gets... If you get really good at it, you can do it really fast. And there's a certain way to do it by holding the needle. So if this was at the end, I take my ends and I pull them so that the thread is the same length on both sides. That's important because the worst part is if you're getting towards the end and then you don't have enough to finish on one side, but there's plenty on the other, there's no way to fix that. You'd have to back stitch and then start with a new piece or cut the whole thing open and start over again. So I went through once on this side, right? I'm going to take this needle on this side, go back through, and then pull it through. And I'm not going to pull it all the way out. But what I'm going to do is, and this is how you get really fast at it, is you make a cross with the needles. The one that just came out goes on the back of the one that you're going to use. So you're holding it like this. And now you take this needle and you go through the same hole that you already came through, right? And then you take your hands and pull it out, and then take both of them and pull them tight, right? And then you just keep doing the same thing. You stick this one through. Again, before I even pull it out, I just grab it with this needle on the front side of it, start it a little bit, and then take the needle. And again, if this is in front of you and in your lap, it would go a lot quicker. But you can see, again, I can't really see the holes on this angle, how fast it would go if everything was set up correctly. A little impromptu. This one has. Now, some people get even more creative and they start holding it all with one hand too, because if their hole didn't punch through all the way, so what you would do with that is you'd have a scratch hole or some sort of an awl. You'd hold it in the palm of your hand while you have the needle. So now I'm like this. I got an awl, a needle, and a needle on this one. So like if this hole wasn't punched through all the way, I would just take the awl, punch it through, and then keep on going. And then this is really popular. They got the name saddle stitch because that's how they would sew the saddles together. And some people do if you're doing repairs and stuff like that. So that's the saddle stitch. I hope you could see some of it. And then it's just a nice spaced out stitch. It looks like a normal stitch, but again, it's very strong because if one side breaks, you still have this whole other side that is continuous. It's going back and forth. As in the lock stitch, it's locking it in between the leather. And if that breaks, then the whole thing falls apart.
So someone is asking about your relationship with the WWF.
I was commissioned to make some title belts along with Orange County Choppers. They were doing all the metal work, and then I was doing all the leather work. I still have one hanging up behind me. Or
you should show
behind
them.
you guys. Yeah,
you want me to grab it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and how did that get started, Jay?
It's funny because one of the first motorcycle seats I made was for a chopper being made for the WWE. And it's just funny that we ended up backing up to them. So I went to high school with a friend who got a job at Orange County Choppers, and he got me in with them. And then I was doing all the motorcycle seats for them. And then I switched gears with this business, which I was doing a lot of heavy leather work, so it kind of all just fell into place. So this is a blank. This is what it looks like before it gets all the good stuff on it. You know, all these holes are for screws that hold the plates on. Now, this is a problem with black things. You can't really see the details in them, but it's all carved. It's a little dusty too.
I wonder if you
can
put
see it. If you put that light on, it's just gonna blare.
It's gonna blind them. Okay.
Yeah, but you got like a little logo on there. I can kind of see it there.
What tools are you using to hand tool those?
Oh yeah. So the process of hand tooling is you take a natural carving sheet that I was carving leather that I was telling you before. It doesn't have any finishes on it, so when you soak it in water, it becomes like clay. You can mold it into shape into different things. And when you carve leather, you're not actually taking leather out like you would with a wood carving. You're compressing the leather. So what you start off with is you trace your pattern onto it, and then you take what's called a swivel knife. I'll pull it over there in a second.
So our shop looks organized, but it is kind of a mess.
That was a bunch of razor blades that just fell on my shoes, but I have steel toes. So this is called a swivel knife. There's a little blade on there. It's on an angle so that you can get detail. And you hold it on your finger like this, and they call it a swivel knife. You can twist it between your fingers so that you can carve in circles and turns. And it's important when you're carving to keep the blade straight up and down. If you start going on a side, when you start to compress the leather, your design gets all funky and doesn't look correct. So once the design is carved in, you start compressing it with different tools, and there's different patterns and stuff on here. I could probably pull out a sample of a carving real quick, actually.
And while he does it, I want to show you, someone mentioned the workbench. I know everyone loves that. I feel like it's people come in here and always take a peek. So this is Jay's workbench, and it is pretty organized, I have to say, even though the rest of the shop can be kind of messy. So Jay, just so you know, there's only about 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, real quick, this is what leather carving is. Let's see if we can get a shot of that. So there's a good one. You can see there's depth to it. That's just from compressing the leather. And once it's dry, it doesn't change. And then you would put a finish on it so that it wouldn't get wet again and get all mushy. And that's when the problem of the design disappearing would come in.
So someone's asking if you offer workshops.
Yes, we have. We've done workshops before, and there would just have to be a small group. I still have some kits left too. So you all get like a beginner kit of the basic tools that you would need. Again, you can with leather carving. There's like a bajillion different tools, so you just keep growing and growing your collection. Yeah, there's vintage ones you can collect too. But I give you the basic set, what you need. And that's all you really need, to be honest. Like all this stuff I probably use, some of these I probably use once and that's it. It just depends on how much you get into the craft of leather carving.
So are there any other questions? I know we only have about 2 minutes left, or anything else that you guys want to see. We could show them, I wanted to show them your machines, actually, the sewing.
Okay, well that's even a bigger mess, but come with me. It's going to get dark. My shop is like a cave. There's different little sections to it. So I'll show you some of the machines I work with. This is one of them. They're all Adlers. They're German machines. They're known for their leatherworking machines. This one's like semi-automatic, so it has all these crazy buttons and stuff on it, but it's not really necessary. I'll show you the bigger one. It can sew through 1 inch of leather. Not that I never need to, but this is typically what I use for like the leather shelves that require a stitch through really heavy leather. I don't know. I'd love to show you the needle. It's like a nail. Apparently, I could sew through wood too. If anybody needs some wood sewn together. And then I have just a Juki upholstery machine as well. So yeah, those are the sewing machines. There's more, but maybe another video. I'll show you the rest of the shop. There's metalworking tools, and it just goes on and on.
So thank you guys so much for joining us. It was great to see everyone and hear your questions.